What if I told you that Africa is not its original name? What if I told you that the very word Africa is a label imposed from the outside, and that for thousands of years, the people who lived on this vast land never called it that? Why would an entire continent, the cradle of humanity, carry a name born from conquest? Today, we travel through forgotten empires, erased identities, colonial cartography, and modern reinvention. This is not just the story of a continent. It is the story of how names shape power and how memory can be rewritten. Sit back, because what you're about to discover changes how you see Africa forever. Long before borders, passports, or colonial maps, there was only land. Vast savannas, towering mountains, endless deserts, dense rainforests humming with life. This was not Africa. To the ancient Egyptians, citizens of Kemet, their land meant the Black Land, referring to the fertile soil along the Nile. To the Greeks, it was Libya, a word that referred to most of North Africa and sometimes beyond. To the Romans, the northern coast was called Africa Proconsularis, named after the Afri tribe near Carthage. But none of these names described the whole continent, because to its people, there was no continent. There were kingdoms, civilizations, empires. Long before Europe emerged from the Dark Ages, Africa was already building monumental states. In the Nile Valley rose ancient Egypt, architects of pyramids, mathematics, medicine, and astronomy. South of Egypt flourished Kingdom of Kush, which would one day conquer Egypt itself and rule as the 25th dynasty. Further west, along the Niger River, powerful empires rose in succession: Ghana Empire, Mali Empire, Songhai Empire. These were not tribal societies. They had taxation systems, armies, universities. At Timbuktu, scholars debated law, astronomy, and theology, while Europe struggled with plague and illiteracy. On the eastern coast, Swahili Coast city-states traded with Arabia, India, and China. In southern Africa, Great Zimbabwe stood as a masterpiece of stone engineering built without mortar. Africa did not lack civilization. It lacked a single name. The word likely comes from the Roman term Afri, referring to a tribe in what is now Tunisia. When Carthage fell in 146 BCE, Rome named the province Africa. Over time, European cartographers extended that regional name to describe the entire landmass, a label born in North Africa, imposed upon millions who never chose it. And here is the critical turning point. When European exploration expanded in the 15th century, particularly under Portugal, the word Africa became globalized. But something else was spreading too. With the Atlantic slave trade, Africa began to be defined not by its empires, but by its exploitation. Between the 15th and 19th centuries, over 12 million Africans were forcibly transported across the Atlantic. European narratives shifted. Africa was no longer the land of Mali's gold or Egypt's pyramids. It became portrayed as dark, uncivilized, empty. A myth. A convenient myth. Because if a land is seen as empty or inferior, it is easier to conquer. In 1884 to 1885, European powers gathered at the Berlin Conference. Not a single African leader was present. In a room in Berlin, they carved the continent like a cake. Lines were drawn with rulers. Ethnic groups were split apart. Rival communities were forced together. This was not geography. This was engineering. Africa, once a mosaic of self-defined polities, became a patchwork of colonies. French West Africa, British East Africa, Belgian Congo. The name Africa now carried a new identity, colonized. But history does not move in one direction. In the 20th century, African intellectuals began asking a dangerous question. Who are we beyond colonial borders? Leaders like Kwame Nkrumah spoke of Pan-Africanism, a vision of unity beyond imposed lines. In 1963, newly independent states formed the Organization of African Unity. The goal was clear. Political liberation was not enough. Mental liberation was necessary. Yet here lies the paradox. Even as nations reclaimed sovereignty, they kept colonial borders, and they kept the name Africa. Why? Because sometimes reclaiming a name is more powerful than replacing it. Today, Africa is home to 54 countries, over 1.4 billion people, thousands of languages, the fastest-growing population on Earth. The African Union, successor to the OAU, now speaks of Agenda 2063, an integrated, prosperous, self-defined continent. But globally, perception still battles reality. To some, Africa means poverty. To others, it means potential. To investors, it means markets. To its youth, it means future. And quietly, a new narrative is forming, one not written in Berlin, not written in Rome, but written in Lagos, Lagos, Accra, Kigali, Johannesburg, Cairo. Or was the name simply expanded, like Persia becoming Iran? Africa did not appear overnight. It was layered. Roman geography, colonial expansion, Pan-African redefinition. The land remained, the people remained, but the meaning changed. And perhaps that is the real story. Because sometimes, a name is not just a word. It is a battlefield of memory, a negotiation between past and future, a mirror of who controls the narrative. Africa did not lose itself. It is still becoming itself. Two truths exist at once. Africa, the imposed label of empire, and Africa, the reclaimed identity of a billion voices. The question is no longer, how did Africa get its name? The question is, who will define what that name means next?